Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the Finkelstein Wrestling Roundup. I am Babs, and I am with you this Tuesday night. It is April 26th, and it is very stormy. We had some big storms come through the area, but thankfully we didn't lose the internet. I was a little bit worried. But we have the internet, we have power, and I do have my guest, Scott Finkelstein, on the phone on hold. Scott is a wrestling photographer, which is really interesting. I don't know much about photography, so I definitely want to talk to him about that and get in depth on that. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think it's going to be really interesting and something different. One thing I wanted to do with the podcast is not just have wrestlers on, although I think that's really great, and I like to hear different wrestlers' opinions about things and their perspectives, but also to have other people who are involved in wrestling talk about how they contribute to the product. I mean, they're definitely a part of it. Last week I had Yolanda on, and we were talking about merch, and we were talking about branding, so it'll be very interesting. I mean, wrestling is a very visual art form, so it'll be interesting to talk to Scott about that and photography and how that plays into it. So I'm really looking forward to this. So I want to thank everybody for joining me here for episode 5. I'd like to thank Damage 365 Radio for allowing us to be part of the network, and of course our sponsors, being Finkelstein Wrestling Superstore, of course, and I'll have more information about that, where you can find it and where you can find the store later on in the hour. But first we're going to go to commercial. We'll be back in 2 minutes, and I will have Scott on the line.
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
This is the hardcore icon, Just Incredible, and you're listening to Damage 365 Radio. Now that's not just the coolest, that's not just the best. Damage 365 Radio, now that's just incredible.
Finkelstein Wrestling Superstore, selling wrestling memorabilia from all around the world, including WWE, TNA, Japan, Mexico, and the very best of the independents. They've got action figures, DVDs, autographed memorabilia, t-shirts, and more. Plus, stop in and get tickets for great promotions like UWA Elite, CZW, and many others. Located indoors at the world-famous English Town Flea Market, Green Building, booth number 35 on 90 Wilson Avenue, Manalapan Township, New Jersey. Open every Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Log on to Facebook.com/Funkenstein Inc. for more information.
Join Brandon Lewis and Christopher Scythe Bracey every Tuesday night on YouTube.com/2KW at 8:30 p.m. as they bring you the matches and moments that make 2KW Pro the heart of New York City. 2KW Pro, your company, your wrestling.
This is Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and you're listening to Damage Radio 365. Yeah, baby!
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
Hi, everybody. We are back, and I have Scott on the line. Scott, thank you for being on the Finkelstein Wrestling Roundup.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad that the guy who set up the chairs at wrestling events wasn't available, and the spot opened up for me. So thank you very much.
No, well, you know what? Actually, I have him scheduled in a few weeks. So,
well, you know, it's cool. I'm glad you bumped Cena for me. so that's great, and I appreciate it. Otherwise, I think people are going to be turning away from this podcast faster than a Alicia Fox-Tamina match.
Oh, that's not your favorite match?
Oh, no, but, you know, I'm just saying that it's certainly good for the old break, isn't it?
Well, actually, like I said, I really wanted to have you on because I'm really interested in talking to people all throughout wrestling. I mean, wrestling is really, there's a lot of different parts that make it up. So I'm really excited. I don't know much about photography in wrestling, so I really wanted to talk to you about that. Because wrestling is such a very visual media, like I was mentioning, you know, and still photos, you know, are a part of that.
They are, but it's become very archaic. If you watch WWE broadcasts and even TNA, you don't see photographers around the ring anymore, which is in contrast to Japan, where the entire hard cam side is just covered with photographers. So I kind of figure at this point in 2016 that still photography is, a very underlooked medium.
Yeah, I remember WWE kind of played on that. You were speaking about the Japanese the Japanese photographers. I remember with Yoko Ozuna back in the 90s, the WWE used to play off that a few times.
Marty Jannetty played a photographer whose flash went off and cost Hulk Hogan the WWF championship at that point, back to Yokozuna. But nowadays, there's one guy behind one of the video guys, and he's got the whole headset gimmick going on. But you never. It stills for WWE. It's like a necessary evil sometimes. Trying to get credentials to shoot around the ring are absolutely impossible, even on house shows. I've been told I've come close to getting those, but because I live in the New York, New Jersey area, which is sort of their headquarters, that they weren't going to try untested people in their big markets. So, will it happen? Probably not, but, it's a nice bucket list thing.
That's interesting. It was funny you mentioned that Yokozuna, the whole flash photography thing. That was King of the Ring 1993. That was the first one. And I always thought, and I'd heard, the popular rumor was that it was Jim Cornette. Because Jim Cornette used to be a photographer, that's how he started. And so the popular kind of opinion was that it was Jim Cornette. So I actually didn't know it was Marty Jannetty, so that's really interesting.
Well, it wouldn't be past Cornette to have booked that. And also don't forget another very important wrestling personality that started off as a photographer was Paul Heyman.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't know that. I actually just learned that really recently. I went to Bill Apter. He has a book, Is Wrestling Fixed? And he did...
Bill Apter's my friend and guru.
He's a really nice guy. He's always very sweet and very, very personable. He's very friendly. He's very nice to talk to. I've talked to him on a few occasions. And he did he did a show. He did his one-man show at Philomoka here in Philadelphia. And so he was talking about that, and he actually was showing pictures of Paul Heyman back in the days when he was doing that. I had no idea he started out that way.
So yes, Paul Heyman did at one point have hair.
Yeah, that was the next thing. I was like, wait a minute, he's a photographer? Wait, there's hair there. Hold on. And there's no phone. Are you sure that's Paul Heyman?
The phones back then were about 18 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the WCW gimmick?
Oh, Oh, that big huge phone. Oh man.
Yeah, nowadays, you slap someone upside the head with an iPhone, you're not going to cause a lot of damage.
Right, you're not really going to buy that, but that phone that Paul Heyman used to carry around, Paulie, I believe that. That thing was heavy, and I'm sure half of that was a heavy battery, and I would believe that hurts. So,
more than probably.
Yeah, more than probably. That's true. So Scott, how did you get interested in wrestling?
Well, back in about 1977, my brother was 5 years older than I am, and so when your brother is 17 and you're 12, there's quite a large age difference. So he used to beat me royally. And practice wrestling because he was a big wrestling fan. And then one rainy Saturday afternoon, watching Channel 17 out of Philadelphia on UHF stations, there were a couple of monster movies on, and then at 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock was Championship Wrestling, which was the repeat from the week before on WRR. So we were watching, WWF wrestling at that point, before it led into one of my favorite TV series of the day, 1999. But I started watching Championship Wrestling religiously as part of my television watching experiences between the monster movies and the science fiction, and got into it. And then once superstar Billy Graham was scheduled to defend the WWF title against Dusty Rhodes in Madison Square Garden, that was my first match, the first time I went to a live event.
Wow.
And after that, I was hooked.
Wow. That's amazing. You know, that's a match like where you hear about nowadays and you're just like kind of in awe because it's legendary. You know, people who have so many stories around Billy Graham and then, of course, the American Dream, you know. Those are the sort of things that you just are kind of in awe of. Whenever I hear someone talk about that, I'm always like, oh my gosh, you're so lucky. That's so amazing. How was it, like, at your first show? What did you feel like when you were actually in Madison Square Garden watching this happen?
You know, Madison, at that point, we were like a backload section. So it was like basically like watching a movie, or you're staring at the ring, which is kind of small. It really didn't start getting really cool for me until we moved down to the ringside seats.
Oh wow!
So the next month we went with the Dusty Graham Texas Death Match. So I had my fill of blood that time.
Right.
Neil Mascaris made his Madison Square Garden appearance.
Oh, yeah.
So wrestling at that point, it was funny because they always announced the entire lineup for the next month just before the main event.
Right.
And that was actually something that, as a fan, and I've talked to other fans of that era, like ROH's Kerry Sulkin, you always looked forward to the announcement of what next month would bring, especially if they had guest stars from other areas like the Von Erichs or Mike Graham and Steve Kern as a tag team. Madison Square Garden, for that reason, was the mecca of professional wrestling because anything can happen, and it was before the advent of pay-per-views or television used to support the house shows.
Right.
The goal of television was to bring people into the house shows, as opposed to nowadays, the house shows are designed to bring ratings to the TV show. So Madison Square Garden was the place because that's where title changes could happen. It was where you got the very best of the WWF.
Right.
And from then, we started going to local area, cards, high schools. Asbury Park Convention Hall used to run bi-weekly in the summer. So whoever Bob Backlund fought at the Garden, the month before, Ivan Putski would inevitably fight in Asbury Park Convention Hall. And that's when I started toting around an old 110 camera, taking pictures from my seat, and as time went on, graduated to a 35, and that's how I developed a love of photography as it involves professional wrestling.
Oh wow! So it kind of started from you, like as a fan, really, like just out of your own personal sort of wanting to take pictures and for your own self.
Well, I'm still a fan. There's not a lot of money in this. So if you don't enjoy doing it, don't do it. I still enjoy doing it. I can't sit in a seat and watch anymore because I'm used to being around the ring. I'm used to having that energy that's focused at the ring, getting the washback from that. So sitting in a seat is like watching television with the sound off. It's just very unsatisfying, and it really doesn't even matter how good the show is at that point. It's a distraction, and there's those things in the way, those ropey things, and I would rather shoot an indie show than go to Madison Square Garden or a pay-per-view and sit in a chair and watch WWF or WWE. And I honestly believe a lot of the times you're even getting a better show with the indies, and I will support the indies to my dying day.
Absolutely. And that's a very good point. I find the same thing where I've gone to shows